a plan for settling Liaotung. As was said, TsʻAo PʻEi, having made his way into the Yuan palace, saw two women there whom he was about to kill. Suddenly a red light shone in his eyes, and he paused. Lowering his sword, he said, "Who are you?" "Thy handmaid is the widow of the late Yuan Shao ne Liu," said the elder of the two, "and this is the wife of Hsi, his second son. She was of the Chern family. When Hsi was sent to command in Yu, her family objected to her going so far from home, and she stayed behind." TsʻAo PʻEi drew her toward him and looked at her closely. Her hair hung disordered, her face was dusty and tear-stained, but when, with the sleeve of his inner garment, he had wiped away these disfigurements, he saw a woman of exquisite loveliness, with a complexion clear as jade touched with the tender bloom of a flower petal. A woman indeed beautiful enough to ruin a kingdom. "I am the son of the minister TsʻAo," said he, turning to the elder woman. "I will guarantee your safety, so you need fear nothing." He then put by his sword and sat down at the upper end of the room. As the great minister TsʻAo was entering the gate of the conquered city, Hsu rode up very quickly, past him and pointed with his whip at the gate, saying, "Amen. You would not have been here but for my plans." TsʻAo laughed, but his captains were very annoyed. When he reached the Yuan residence, he stopped at the gate and asked if anyone had gone in. The guard at the gate said, "Your son is within." TsʻAo called him out and chid him, but the wife of the late prefect interposed, saying, "But for your son we had not been saved. I desire to present to you a lady, of the Chern family, as a handmaid to your son." TsʻAo bade them bring out the girl, and she bowed before him. After looking at her intently, he said, "Just the wife for him," and he told TsʻAo PʻEi to take her to wife. After the conquest of Chichu had been made quite sure, TsʻAo made a ceremonial visit to the Yuan family cemetery, where he sacrificed at the tomb of his late rival, bowed his head, and lamented bitterly. Turning to his captains, he said, "Not long ago, when Parn Chu and I worked together in military matters, he asked me, saying, 'If this disturbance continue, what districts should be held?' And I replied, asking him what he thought. He said, 'To the south I would hold the river, on the north guard against Yen and Tai and the hordes from the Shamo. Thence southward I would try for the empire, and do you not think I might succeed?' I replied, saying, 'I depended upon the wisdom and force of the world directed by TsʻAo. Then everything would be possible.' These words seem as if spoken only yesterday, and now he is gone. Thinking over it, I cannot refrain from tears." His officers were deeply affected. TsʻAo treated the widow generously, giving her gold and silks and food to her content. He also issued a further order that the taxes in Hopai would be remitted in consideration of the sufferings of the people during the warlike operations. He sent up a memorial and formally became governor of Chichu. One day Chichu, riding in at the east gate, met Hsu, who called out to him, "Would you fellows be riding through here if it had not been for me?" Hsu replied, "We fellows, those who survive and those who perished, risked our lives in bloody battle to get this city, so do not brag of your deeds. You are a lot of blockheads, not worth talking about," said Yu. Chu in his anger drew his sword and ran him through. Then he took his head and went to tell TsʻAo the reason. Said TsʻAo, "He and I were old friends and we could joke together. Why did you kill him?" He blamed Chu very severely and gave orders that the corpse should be buried honorably. He inquired for any wise and reputable men who were known to be living in the district, and was told of a certain cavalry officer named Tsu Yen of Tungwu City, who had on many occasions given valuable advice to Yuan Shao. As the advice was not followed, Yen had pleaded indisposition and remained at home. TsʻAo sent for this man, gave him an office, and said to him, According to the former registers, there are 300,000 households in the district, so that one may well call it a major district. Yen replied, "The empire is rent and the country is torn. The brothers Yuan are at war and the people have been stripped naked. Yet, sir, you do not hasten to inquire after local conditions and how to rescue the people from misery, but first compute the possibilities of taxation. Can you expect to gain the support of our people by such means?" TsʻAo accepted the rebuke, changed his policy, thanked him and treated him all the better for it. As soon as Chichu was settled, TsʻAo sent to find out the movements of Yuan Tian. He heard he was ravaging Canling and the places near it in the south and west. Moreover, the scouts brought the news that Yuan Shang had fled to the hills. An expedition had been sent against him, but Shang would not face a battle. He had gone away to Yuchu to his brother Hsi. Tian, having surrendered with all his army, yet prepared for another attempt on Chichu, whereupon TsʻAo summoned him. Tian refused to come, and TsʻAo sent letters breaking off the marriage with his daughter. Soon after, TsʻAo led an expedition against Tian and marched to Pyongyang, whereupon Tian sent to Liu Piao to beg assistance. Piao sent for Liu Pei to consult about this, and he said, "TsʻAo is very strong now that he has overcome Chichu, and the Yuans will be unable to hold out for long. Nothing is to be gained by helping this man, and it may give TsʻAo the loophole he is always looking for to attack this place. My advice is to keep the army in condition and devote all our energies to defense." "Agreed, but what shall we say?" said Piao. "Write to both the brothers as peacemaker in gracious terms." Accordingly, Liu Piao wrote thus to Yuan Tian: "When the superior man would escape danger, he does not go to an enemy state. I heard recently that you had crooked the knee to TsʻAo, which was ignoring the enmity between him and your father, rejecting the duties of brotherhood, and leaving behind you the shame of an alliance with the enemy. If your brother, the successor to Chichu, has acted unfraternally, your duty was to bend your inclination to follow him and wait till the state of affairs had settled. Would it not have been very noble to bring about the redress of wrongs?" And to Yuan Shang he wrote, "Your brother, the ruler of Chichu, is of an impulsive temperament and confuses right with wrong. You ought first to have destroyed TsʻAo in order to put an end to the hatred which your father bore him, and when the situation had become settled, to have endeavored to redress the wrongs. Would not that have been well? If you persist in following this mistaken course, remember the hound and the hare, both so wearied that the peasant got the hare." From this letter, Yuan Tian saw that Liu Piao had no intention of helping him, and feeling he alone could not withstand TsʻAo, he abandoned Pyongyang and fled to Nampi, whither TsʻAo pursued him. The weather was very cold and the river was frozen, so that his grain boats could not move. Wherefore TsʻAo ordered the inhabitants to break the ice and tow the boats. When the peasants heard the order, they ran away. TsʻAo angrily wished to arrest and behead them. When they heard this, they went to his camp in a body and offered their heads to the sword. "If I do not kill you, my order will not be obeyed," said TsʻAo. "Yet supposing I cut off your heads, but I cannot bear to do that. Quickly flee to the hills and hide so that my soldiers do not capture you." The peasants left weeping. Then Yuan Tian led out his army against TsʻAo. When both sides were arrayed, TsʻAo rode to the front, pointed with his whip at his opponent and railed at him, saying, "I treated you well. Why then have you turned against me?" Tian replied, "You have invaded my land, captured my cities, and broken off my marriage. Yet you accuse me of turning against you." TsʻAo ordered Hsu Huang to go out and give battle. Tian bade Pyongyang accept the challenge. After a few bouts, Pyongyang was slain, and Tian, having lost, fled and went into Nampi, where he was besieged. Tian, panic-stricken, sent Hsin to see TsʻAo and arrange surrender. He is nothing but a fickle-minded child, said TsʻAo. He is never of the same mind 2 days running, and I cannot depend upon what he says. Now your brother is in my employ and has a post of importance. You had better remain here also. Sir Minister, you are in error, said Hsin. It is said that the Lord's honor is the servant's glory, the Lord's sadness is the servant's shame. How can I turn my back on the family I have so long served? TsʻAo felt he could not be persuaded and sent him back. P'Ei returned and told Tian the surrender could not be arranged, and Tian turned on him, angrily calling him a traitor. At this unmerited reproach, such a huge wave of anger welled up in the man's breast that he was overcome and fell in a swoon. They carried him out, but the shock had been too severe, and soon after he died. Tian regretted his conduct when it was too late. Then Quotu said, "Tomorrow when we go out to battle, we will drive the people out in front as a screen for the soldiers, and we must fight a winning battle." That night they assembled all the common people of the place, and forced into their hands swords and spears. At daylight, they opened the 4 gates, and a huge party with much shouting came out at each, peasantry carrying arms in front and soldiers behind them. They pushed on toward TsʻAo's camps, and a melee began which lasted till near midday. But this was quite indecisive, although heaps of dead lay everywhere. Seeing that success was at best only partial, TsʻAo rode out to the hills near, and thence had the drums beaten for a new attack under his own eye. Officers and men, seeing that he could observe them in person, exerted themselves to the utmost, and Tian's army was severely defeated. Of the peasantry, driven into the battlefield, multitudes were slain. TsʻAo Hung, who displayed very great valor, burst into the press of battle and met Yuan Tian face to face. The two slashed and hammered at each other, and Tian was killed. Quotu saw that his side was wholly disorganized, and tried to withdraw into the shelter of the city. Yo Qin saw this, and opened a tremendous discharge of arrows so that the moat was soon filled with dead. The city fell to TsʻAo. He entered and set about restoring peace and order. Then suddenly appeared a new army under one of UNHC's captains. TsʻAo led out his men to meet them, but the 2 commanders laid down their arms and yielded. They were rewarded with the rank of Marquis. Then Chang Yen, the leader of the Black Hills Brigands, came with 10 legions and gave in his submission. He was made a general, Changchun. By an order of TsʻAo's, the head of Yuan Tian was exposed, and death was threatened to anyone who should lament for him. Nevertheless, a man dressed in mourning attire was arrested for weeping below the exposed head at the north gate. Taken into TsʻAo's presence, he said he was Wang Hsiu and had been an officer in Qingchu. He had been expelled because he had remonstrated with Tian, but when the news of Tian's death came, he had come to weep for him. "Did you know of my command?" "I knew it. Yet you were not afraid." When one has received favors from a man in life, it would be wrong not to mourn at his death. How can one stand in the world if one forgets duty through fear? If I could bury his body, I would not mind death. TsʻAo said, and there were many such as this in this district. What a pity that the Yuan family could not make the best of them. But if they had done so, I should never have dared to turn my eyes toward this place. The intrepid mourner was not put to death. The remains of Yuan Tian were properly interred, and Wang Hsiu was well treated and even given an appointment. In his new position, he was asked for advice about the best way to proceed against Yuan Shang, who had fled to his brother, but he held his peace, thereby winning from TsʻAo renewed admiration for his constancy. "He is indeed loyal," said TsʻAo. Then he questioned Quotu, who named certain officers who should be sent to bring about the surrender of the Yuans. Then 5 captains, to attack Yuchu along 3 routes, and other armies were sent against Pingchu. The 2 brothers Shang and Hsi heard of TsʻAo's advance with dismay, for they had no hope of successful resistance. Therefore they abandoned the city and hastily marched into Liaotung to the governor Wuhuan Chu. But the governor was not disposed to incur the enmity of the powerful TsʻAo, so he called his subordinates together to swear them to support him and said, "I understand that TsʻAo is the most powerful man of the day, and I am going to support him, and those who do not go with me I shall put to death." Each in turn smeared his lips with the blood of sacrifice and took the oath till it came to the turn of Han Herng. Instead he dashed his sword to the ground, crying, "I have received great benefits from the Yuans. Now my lord has been vanquished. My knowledge was powerless to save him, my bravery insufficient to cause me to die for him. I have failed in my duty. But I refuse to commit the crowning act of treachery and ally myself with TsʻAo." This speech made the others turn pale. The chief said, "For a great undertaking there must be lofty principles. However, success does not necessarily depend upon universal support, and since Han Herng is actuated by such sentiments, then let him follow his conscience." So he turned Han Herng out of the assembly. Wuhuan Chu then went out of the city to meet and welcome TsʻAo's army and rendered his submission. He was well received, and the title given him of Guardian of the North. Then the scouts came to say that the 3 captains had marched to Pingchu, but that Cao Can had occupied Huquen Pass and could not be dislodged. So TsʻAo marched thither himself. The defender still maintaining his position, TsʻAo asked for plans. Sun Yu proposed that a band should go over pretending to be deserters. TsʻAo assented and then called the 2 brothers Lu, to whom he gave whispered orders. They left with their companies. Soon they came near the pass and called out, saying, "We are old officers in Yuan's armies forced into surrender to TsʻAo. We find him so false, and he treats us so meanly that we want to return to help our old master. Wherefore quickly open your gates to us." Cao Can was suspicious, but he let the 2 officers come up to the pass, and when they had stripped off their armor and left their horses they were permitted to enter. And they said to Cao Can, "TsʻAo's men are new to the country and not settled. You ought to fall upon their camp this very evening. If you approve, we will lead the attack." Cao Can decided to trust them and prepared to attack, giving the 2 brothers the leadership. But as they drew near TsʻAo's camp, a great noise arose behind them, and they found themselves in an ambush, attacked on all sides. Realizing too late that he had been the victim of a ruse, Cao retreated to the pass, but found it occupied by the enemy. Cao Can then made the best of his way to the barbarian chieftain Shanyu. TsʻAo gave orders to hold the passes and sent companies in pursuit. When Cao Can reached the boundary of Shanyu's territory, he met Xin, prince of the northern tribesmen. Cao Can dismounted and made a low obeisance, saying, "TsʻAo is conquering and absorbing all the borders, and your turn, O prince, will come quickly. I pray you help me, and let us smite together for the safety of the northern regions." The prince replied, "I have no quarrel with TsʻAo, why then should he invade my land? Do you desire to embroil me with him?" He would have nothing to do with Cao Can and sent him away. At his wit's end, Can decided to try to join Liu Piao and got so far on his journey as Shanglu, when he was taken prisoner and put to death by Wang Yin. His head was sent to TsʻAo, and Wang was created a marquis for this service. Thus Pingchu was conquered. Then TsʻAo began to discuss the overthrow of Wuhuan on the west. TsʻAo Hung, speaking in the name of his brother officials, said, "The 2 brothers Yuan are nearly done for and too weak to be feared. They have fled far into the Sea of Sand, and if we pursue them thither, it may bring down Liu Piao and Liu Pei upon the capital. Should we be unable to rescue it, the misfortune would be immense. Wherefore, we beg you to return to TsʻAo. But Chia was of different advice. You are wrong, said he. Though the prestige of our Lord fills the empire, yet the men of the desert, relying upon their inaccessibility, will not be prepared against us. Wherefore I say attack, and we shall conquer them. Beside, Yuan Shao was kind to the nomads, and the two brothers have been more so. They must be destroyed. As for Liu Piao, he is a mere gossip, who need not cause the least anxiety. And Liu Pei is unfit for any heavy responsibility, and will take no trouble over a light one. You may leave the state with perfect safety, and make as long an expedition as you choose. Nothing will happen. You speak well, O faring TsʻAo, said TsʻAo. He led his legions, heavy and light, to the edge of the desert with many wagons. The expedition marched into the desert. The rolling ocean of yellow sand spread its waves before them, and they saw far and near the eddying sand pillars, and felt the fierce winds that drove them forward. The road became precipitous and progress difficult. TsʻAo began to think of returning and spoke thereof to Chia, who had advised the journey. Chia had speedily fallen victim to the effects of the climate, and at this time he lay in his cart very ill. TsʻAo's tears fell as he said, My friend, you are suffering for my ambition to subdue the Shamo. I cannot bear to think you should be ill. You have always been very good to me, said the sick man, and I can never repay what I owe you. The country is exceedingly precipitous, and I am thinking of going back. What think you? Chia replied, The success of an expedition of this kind depends upon celerity. To strike a sudden blow on a distant spot with a heavy baggage train is difficult. To ensure success, the need is light troops and a good road to strike quickly before an enemy has time to prepare. Now you must find guides who know the road well. Then the sick advisor was left at Iku for treatment, and they sought among the natives for some persons to serve as guides. One of Yuan Shao's old captains knew those parts well, and TsʻAo called him and questioned him. He said, Between autumn and summer this route is under water, the shallow places too heavy for wheeled traffic, the deep parts insufficient for boats. It is always difficult. Therefore you would do better to return and at Lulanku cross the Paiton Pass into the desert. Then advance to Liaotung, Willow City, and smite before there is time to prepare. One sudden rush will settle Maotun. For this valuable information and plan TsʻAo was made a pacificator of the North General, and went in advance as leader and guide. Next after him came Chang Liao, and TsʻAo brought up the rear. They advanced by double marches. TsʻAo led Chang Liao to White Wolf Hill, where they came upon the two Yuans with Maotun and a large force of cavalry. Chang Liao galloped to inform his chief, and TsʻAo rode up to the top of an eminence to survey the foe. He saw a large mass of cavalry, without any military formation, advancing in a disorderly crowd. Said he, They have no formation. We can easily rout them. Then he handed over his ensign of command to Chang Liao, who, with TsʻAo, Yu Qin and Su Huang, made a vigorous attack from 4 different points, with the result that the enemy was thrown into confusion. Chang Liao rode forward and slew Maotun, and the other captains gave in. The brothers Yuan, with a few companies of horse, got away into Liaotung. TsʻAo then led his army into Liaotung. For his services, he conferred upon TsʻAo the rank of Marquis of Liaotung and put him over the city. But TsʻAo declined the rank, saying with tears, I am a renegade and a fugitive. It is my good fortune that you spared my life, and how can I accept a price for Lulung camp? I would rather die than accept the marquisate. TsʻAo recognized that reason was on his side and conferred upon him another office. TsʻAo then pacified the Shanyu chieftains, collected a large number of horses, and at once set out on the homeward march. The season was winter, cold and dry. For 200 li there was no water, and grain also was scanty. The troops fed on horse flesh. They had to dig very deep, 30 to 40 chang, 14 to find water. When TsʻAo reached Iku, he rewarded those who had remonstrated with him against the expedition. He said, "I took some risk in going so far, but by good fortune I have succeeded. With the aid of heaven I have secured victory. I could not be guided by your advice, but still, they were counsels of safety, and therefore I reward you to prove my appreciation of advice, and that hereafter you may not fear to speak your minds." The advisor, Quochia, did not live to see the return of his lord. His coffin was placed on the bier in a hall of the government offices, and TsʻAo went thither to sacrifice to his manes. TsʻAo mourned for him, saying, "Alas! Heaven has smitten me, TsʻAo is dead." Then turning to his officers he said, "You, gentlemen, are of the same age as myself, but he was very young to die. I needed him for the future, and unhappily he has been torn from me in the flower of his age. My heart and my bowels are torn with grief." The servants of the late advisor presented his last testament, which they said his dying hand had written, and he had told them to say, "If the minister shall follow the advice given herein, then Liaotung will be secure." TsʻAo opened the cover and read, nodding his head in agreement and uttering deep sighs. But no other man knew what was written therein. Shortly after, Liaotung at the head of a delegation presented a petition saying, "For a long time Kungsun Kayang, the prefect of Liaotung, has been contumacious, and it bodes ill for peace that the brothers Yuan have fled to him. Would it not be well to attack before they move against you? I need not trouble your tiger courage, gentlemen," said TsʻAo smiling. "Wait a few days and you will see the heads of our two enemies sent to me." They could not believe it. As has been related, the two brothers Yuan escaped to the east with a few squadrons of horse. The prefect of Liaotung was a son of General Kungsun II, the warlike, as his title ran. He was a native of Tsiamping. When he heard that the Yuans were on their way to his territory, he called a council to decide upon his plan. At the council Kungsun Kung rose, saying, "When Yuan Shao was alive, he nourished the plan of adding this district to his own. Now his sons, homeless, with a broken army and no officers, are coming here. It seems to me like the dove stealing the magpie's nest. If we offer them shelter, they will assuredly intrigue against us. I advise that they be inveigled into the city, put to death, and their heads sent to TsʻAo, who will be most grateful to us." Said the prefect, "I have one fear, TsʻAo will come against us. If so, it would be better to have the help of the Yuans against him. Then you can send spies to ascertain whether the army is preparing to attack us. If it is, then save them alive. If not, then follow my advice." It was decided to wait till the spies came back. In the meantime, the two Yuans had taken counsel together as they approached Liaotung, saying, "Liaotung has a large army strong enough to oppose TsʻAo. We will go thither and submit till we can slay the prefect and take possession. Then when we are strong enough, we will attack and recover our own land." With these intentions they went into the city. They were received and lodged in the guests' quarters, but when they wished to see Kungsun Kayang, he put them off with the excuse of indisposition. However, before many days the spies returned with the news that TsʻAo's army was quiescent, and there was no hint of any attack. Then Kungsun Kayang called the Yuans into his presence. But before they came, he hid swordmen and axemen behind the arras in the hall. When the visitors came and had made their salutations, Kayang bade them be seated. Now it was bitterly cold, and on the couch where Shang was sitting were no coverings, so he asked for a cushion. The host surlily said, When your heads take that long, long journey, will there be any cushions? Before Shang could recover from his fright, Kayang shouted, "Why do you not begin?" At this out rushed the assassins, and the heads of the two brothers were cut off as they sat. Packed in a small wooden box, they were sent to TsʻAo at Iku. All this time TsʻAo had been calmly waiting, and when his impatient officers had petitioned in a body that he would march to the capital if he intended no attack on the east, he told them what he was waiting for. He would go as soon as the heads arrived. In their secret hearts they laughed. But then, surely enough, a messenger soon came from Liaotung bringing the heads. Then they were greatly surprised, and when the messenger presented his letters, TsʻAo cried, just as TsʻAo said. He amply rewarded the messenger, and the governor of Liaotung was made a marquis and general of the left wing. And when the officers asked what had happened, TsʻAo told them what the late advisor had predicted. He read to them the dead officer's testament, which ran something like this: Yuan Shang and his brother are going to Liaotung. Illustrious sir, you are on no account to attack, for Kungsun Kayang has long lived in fear lest the Yuan should absorb his country. When they arrive, Kayang will hesitate. If you attack, he will save the Yuans to help him. If you wait, they will work against each other. This is evident. The officers simply jumped with surprise to see how perfectly events had been foreseen. Then TsʻAo, at the head of all his officers, performed a grand sacrifice before the coffin of the wise Kuo-Chia. He had died at the age of 38, after 11 years of meritorious and wonderful service in the wars. When heaven permitted Kuo-Chia's birth, it made him ablest man on earth. He knew by rote all histories, from him war kept no mysteries. Like fans, his plans were quite decisive, as Cairns, his strokes were most incisive. Too soon he ran his earthly race, too soon the great beam fell from place. When TsʻAo returned to Chichu, he sent off the coffin of his late advisor to the capital, where it was interred. Then certain of his officers said that, as the north had been overcome, it was time to settle Chiangnan. TsʻAo was pleased and said that had long occupied his thoughts. The last night he spent in Chichu, he went to one of the corner towers and stood there regarding the sky. His only companion was Sun Yu. Presently TsʻAo said, "That is a very brilliant glow there in the south. It seems too strong for me to do anything there." "What is there that can oppose your heaven-high prestige?" said Yu. Suddenly a beam of golden light shot up out of the earth. "Surely a treasure is buried there," remarked Yu. They went down from the city wall, called some men, and led them to the point whence the light proceeded. There the men were ordered to dig. The southern skies with portents glow, the northern lands their treasures show. What the diggers found will appear in the next chapter.